Welcome to Metamorphosis, Initiations, Thresholds, and the Alchemy of Becoming. I'm Vive, and I'm here alongside my co-weaver and collaborator, Kathleen. Hello, Kathleen.
Kia ora, everyone.
We are, thanks, Kathleen. We're devoted to reclaiming the sacred ways of meeting change, rooted in the wisdom of our bodies, ancestors, the universe, and of course, Mum Earth. And we're curious about what becomes possible when we stay present to the in-between, long enough for new patterns, meanings, and futures to emerge. Today, Kathleen is our standing stone as we dive into the richness of this conversation with a very, very dear friend of mine, Ryan Nielsen. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Vive. It's great to be here.
It's such a pleasure. So, Dr. Ryan Nielsen is a certified life coach. He's a somatic skills coach, professor of a musician, a creativity expert, an author, and an international speaker. He's also currently training in body dreaming, an approach to the treatment of developmental trauma that was created by Marion Dunley. We're doing that together. And he is an Oxford University Press published author, and his work has been number one new release on Amazon. I found out so many things reading Ryan's bio today. As a creative artist, he has performed and presented at festivals, venues, and universities throughout the United States and internationally. And he's been a guest on The Artifice, Trust the Process, Mormon Stories, and On the Soul's Terms podcasts, which is hosted by a dear friend of ours, a mutual friend, Chris Skidmore. As a Jungian scholar, Ryan's work has been featured on the Jungian psychology space and in its French counterpart, which I am not going to pronounce because I will probably kill it. He has presented to the International Association of Jungian Studies and will be a speaker at the 2026 Alchemical Imagination Conference in Ireland, which sounds absolutely amazing, as well as here we go, we practice this, Rencontres. You can jump in here, Ryan, if you want de Provence. Did I get it right?
Great.
Thank you. In Aix-en-Provence in France. Ryan and his wife Holly live in Utah with their three children, Holly's garden, and Ryan's books. And today, Ryan is talking about, well, this is the beautiful topic name that he gave us, of Moss, music, and Mary Magdalene, insights from the middle places. It's just beautiful. So, Ryan, tell me about what led to your sense of connection with the imagery, history, and the lore around Mary Magdalene.
Mm. Well, it's been a really surprising part of what's kind of been coming alive for me over the last couple of years. Um, I grew up in a very like high demand religious tradition, and I've had a journey like out of that community, although I still love all the people there. But for my own well-being, I had to leave the village of my upbringing, and and just in searching for new spaces where I can explore soul, things of soul. I ended up getting hired to do a few performances at the Cathedral here in Salt Lake City in Utah. And as it turns out, it is the Cathedral of the Madeleine. It is the only cathedral in the United States that is dedicated to Mary Magdalene. And the artwork in it is astonishing. And it has an unbelievable story of how it came to be. And that's actually what I'm presenting on at these conferences that are coming up in Europe. Um, I started to share, I had a really profound experience interacting with the artwork in the cathedral. And I started to share that with one of our friends, one of our body dreaming friends, um, who it was actually our connection to the Alchemical Imagination Conference there. And I told her how moved I was by this Mary Magdalene imagery. And she said to me, "Well, did you know that the building where you're presenting in Ireland used to be a Magdalene laundry?" And I said, "What's a Magdalene laundry?" I didn't even know what that was. And it turned out like I did a bunch of research, and she sent me some beautiful things to help gently move me into this space. And I feel a real obligation to be so careful about how I talk about these Magdalene laundries because it's such a complex phenomenon. But it was a place where unmarried young mothers were sent out of what many call the shame industrial complex to hide the feminine capacity to generate new life from society. And just the story of the laundries, at first, like my impulse was very much to like, I'll go to a literal place when I'm feeling vulnerable because it's such a deep story. So my first impulse is to find the bad guys behind it and try to find someone to blame. And but when I could pause enough and say, like, is it possible that I've inherited the same psychological structures that underlie those institutions? Is it possible that in the name of Mary Magdalene, there's this coupling of shame with newness? And is it possible that I've inherited that same coupling? Is it like, what would it be like to be so terrified of new life coming in to me that I wouldn't dare keep it as my own? And I immediately found like this rich place for me to practice in self compassion and compassion for others, but also just recognizing this coupling that is just in place, and that the lore of Mary Magdalene seems to hold that in astonishing ways. And then the other just uncanny thing was that this conference in France, it turns out, is the other place in the world that's like the center of Magdalene culture in the south of France. And in fact, the basilica there in the south of France gave like a Class A relic of Mary Magdalene's remains to the bishop of the cathedral here in Salt Lake. It was like this unbelievable, like, and so when all of that Mary Magdalene imagery started coming forward, I thought, I better take this serious. Something's really trying to come in here. And so that's a my best attempt at a not so short introduction to how these themes started to emerge for me.
Kathleen, I can see. I'm going to just invite you in here to speak because I could see your response as Ryan was talking.
Yeah, as soon as you mentioned the cathedral, I just had tears like that transmission, and I feel very emotional because it's you as a sacred masculine bringing forth the Mary Magdalene feels very healing. And
Mm,
at the time of this recording, we've just come through Easter, and on Easter Friday, I was doing some channeling and I received the message that we are the love story of Mary and Yeshua. And so it just feels very poignant. I've just been reading The Madonna's Secret by Sophie Strand, and there's something that stood out
mhm,
to say when Mary and Yeshua would make love and they'd go back and all these flowers would have sprouted up.
mm,
And it just feels so pivotal that we remember that we are the love story of Yeshua and Mary, and it just feels so very poignant that you were bringing this through as the sacred masculine. I think it's
mm.
very, very important. Mm.
I love that. We are the love story. I feel like my favorite writers around this talk about how she's like the missing half of the archetype and that we've been missing her. And the story, like just of how we know what we know about her, is astonishing. there was a gospel according to Mary Magdalene that it turns out, was quite well distributed in early Christianity. And and they know that because they found it in several archaeological sites now. But in the fourth century, it was buried, like literally buried underground in a cave. So already, like the feminine imagery around this is so moving and beautiful. But it's buried in a cave, and it wasn't until I think 1895 a farmer accidentally dug it up. And then it ended up in a museum in London until 1955 is when it was first translated after being silent for nearly 2,000 years. And the story in it is amazing because Mary teaches, well, the thing she teaches is this: she is not she's not someone in a hierarchy. She is someone who has her own voice, her own authority. And the 12 apostles ask her to teach them. And what she teaches them is to have an unshakable faith in this middle realm that allows imaging to happen in the psyche. It's so beautiful. And she sort of, you know, um, like Michael Meade talks about how anciently there were three kind of parts to a map of the human soul, basically spirit, psyche, and body. And then in the fourth century, right around when her gospel had to be buried, there was the Second Council of Constantinople, where they just officially decided to remove the third, to remove soul from the map of the human being. So now there was only two. There was body and there was spirit. Body was bad and spirit was good, right? And like he suggests that if he had to put his finger on a moment when that womb of soul was removed forcefully from Western consciousness, it would be there. And Mary's teaching doesn't just affirm the presence of that third space, she differentiates it so that there's a fourth space. So you have pneuma, soma, psyche, and then what she calls in the Greek version of the text, nous, nous, which is this bridge between soul and spirit. And it's so lovely. It's like so amazing, the way that she teaches and the absolute confidence that she has in her experiences that come through that imaging place. So it's a teaching that's rooted in sovereignty, in personal sovereignty, which is of course why it would have been seen as terrifyingly, uncontrollably dangerous to a nascent hierarchy. Um, but yeah, and the layers just keep going. So she, to me, like in the Jungian world, Jung was convinced that four was the number of wholeness, right? So for her, instead of the human being a trinity, she adds this missing fourth. It becomes a quaternity. And the same exact thing happened with the art in the cathedral here in Salt Lake. They brought in someone to paint the Trinity. So there's a huge painting of the Holy Trinity with Christ on the cross, and it's all there. But the short version of the story is that their bishop in the early 20th century just gets like possessed with this sense that it's not finished. And he ends up years later in France and he finds a portrait of Mary Magdalene. And so if you walk into the cathedral in Salt Lake, that Trinity is now like a divine quaternity with Mary Magdalene in like rich oak, as if she's the roots out of which the cross grows. It's unbelievable. But here's this, like these stories that are centuries and millennia apart, all seem to have this element of restoring or teaching a missing fourth part. And I just, yeah, it's, it has captivated me. So
Yeah. I'm so struck by the fact that you had this experience, like your own experience of something coming in that
mm,
actually was like the thing, the portal that took you into this exploration of, well, how do we let something come in that we don't know exactly what it is, but how do we be with it in that? I mean, tell me, Ryan, if I'm wrong here, but in that fourth place, in that bridge, as as things emerge, it feels so pertinent to like what Kathleen and I've been talking about through this whole summit is like, wow, what's really missing? And perhaps because it was buried all that those thousands of years ago is like a genuine capacity to be with what is emerging because we've lost that place within ourselves, a relationship to that place within ourselves. Would you say that's what's being revealed to you through this journey?
I, I mean, there's so many thoughts that come forward. The one that I think I'll move towards is I love the way that you phrased that as like a relationship to a place that's in us, because I'm convinced that it's a place that is in us and that it's not that it was actually removed. It's that our capacity to relate to it was intentionally interrupted. Um, so I love the way you phrased that. I do think that it's alive and well in all of us. Um, but it has been quite a journey for me to learn how to relate to it. And and as gracious as the word revealed is, and I know you well enough to like I would never want to pretend that like this is a message. I don't know how to explain it. I think it's just because of my upbringing, the sense of revelation was wielded in ways that weren't helpful to me. I'll just say that. So, so I am actually like, I feel like a very, like a new relationship with these kinds of things where I'm even trying to sort that out for myself. Um, but it has been a journey of unexpected and seemingly impossible synchronicities and new things coming in and for me to have a model of an image in my own heart of someone who had that unshakable faith in the reality, the autonomous reality of the ground of their own psyche.
Mm.
That feels really precious to me right now. So yeah, I love the way that you like it's a to me it's about that relationship to the thing that I am convinced is still very much alive in us. And has been what I've loved so much about our friendship, Eve, is because you are just your fingers right on that pulse. And the way you trust your images, that is another, to me, that's the exact same thing. And I think that actually helps me clarify. So it's the idea of revealing. I would hate for a sense of revelation to remove the ordinariness and beauty of this thing that I'm
That was my
stepping
instinct
into.
as you were
Yeah.
talking. Yeah, that
Oh,
it's
was it?
like it's not about, yeah, like that it's not about that the revelation makes us special and that there's some
Mm-mm.
power related to it, which I get is what maybe the association is with revelation in almost like a guru kind of a sense. But
It was for me.
actually,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you for just kind of speaking to that because I agree. It's this. it's the magic of the ordinariness, but also the extraordinariness that happens when we come into relationship with, like we've shared together, image. And the
Image.
images have been like bombarding me personally for a good 5 or 6 years, kind of
Yeah.
hoping to be seen and tended to. And, Kathleen and I have talked about this too, like when an image comes in a dream and there's so much energy and potency in that image that it's sort of like I've been woken up by an image recently. It feels that this is sort of what we're talking about, is how do we come into relationship with these things that are showing up in our everyday lives and come to understand, what they have for us, what they have maybe for the collective, who knows? I don't know. What would you say to that, Ryan? Oh, Kathleen, do you want to jump in?
I was just going to say, while we're on the subject of imagery, when you were talking, Ryan, I was just receiving this image of a rainbow bridge. And what that opened up for me is that that's what's missing from our modern society, or historically for a very long time, is that bridge. And that the bridge is like the rite of passage, that kind of we walk over the bridge from the maiden to the mother to the crone, or whatever that
Mm,
initiation is. There's a bridge, and like our chakra, like we have the rainbows already within us, but it's like,
mhm,
yeah, it's just not that we have to go seeking outside of us, or that we have to have this spontaneous awakening or something. It's just in the ordinariness.
mhm,
And also, just it struck me when you said the womb of soul, because I just, that the womb of soul, because soul comes into our beautiful Mama Earth through the womb. So I was like, that is just so magic.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love the imagery of the rainbow bridge. That's interesting you would bring it up. I was just, this always happens whenever I hang out with Vive. But I was literally reading yesterday Jung's like conversation about the rainbow bridge in the psyche. And and I think what I can bring to that in terms of my own experience is on this idea of ordinariness. I think there can be something very intoxicating for me about wanting to go over the bridge. And I think there's something of depth in that bridge of the ordinariness of walking, of crossing below it that for me right now draws me in. And it is that middle space. And I love it. So yeah, that's interesting. You would bring that in.
Can you say more about middle places, Ryan? Can you say more about what
Yeah.
you mean by that for people?
This is where it gets really hard to talk about rather than experience together. So I think what I can speak to that might um, this might be a good segue to the moss imagery. Um,
Mhm.
so we can get into that. I think I want to start by talking about like what I do to invite people to touch into this middle place is that we'll do an orienting exercise very similar to what we do in body dreaming, where where I just basically invite people to ground in their own bodies and to let their eyes to soften their eyes and allow their eyes to wander the space they're in and to see if there's something their eyes are drawn to. And then they're drawn to it. And I'll just ask them to write down without trying to analyze, without trying to be deep, without trying anything, just to write down the actual perception of what they're looking at. And they'll write it down. And then I do this exercise where I play at the piano and I play different harmonies and I invite them to orient to the sounds that I'm playing. And if they're drawn to a particular sound, to start to sing it. And then we'll improvise where I'm playing chords and they're singing, and we'll for like 10 minutes, right? Where we're in this place of resonance. It's acoustic resonance because it's actually sound, but it's also soulful resonance because it's just what are you drawn to? What sounds are you drawn to? Not which ones are right, but which ones are you drawn to? And after 10 minutes of that, then I'll kind of close the music and I'll say, and I'll invite them back to the same object that they had journaled about before and say, what do you see now? And it's amazing how what they see in the exact same object has completely transformed. And so James Hillman talks about a model of for soul where he says there are events and then there are experiences, but in between the event and the experience is this middle realm that transforms the event into an experience. And if you attune to that middle place of soul, then inevitably your experience changes. And so you can feel the aliveness of this part of you because you're looking in this exercise that I do, and it's been really moving. I just did it. I was visiting the University of Michigan last week and was working with students there. And a student, they saw that when they came back to it the second time, they saw that the shadow was the path to the light. And they knew nothing about Jungian anything. And that was the phrase that stumbled out of their mouth about they were looking at a chair. And it's just like, it's so beautiful. And so this middle realm to me, that's the best like framework. My favorite framework for it is that Hillman's idea of there's this space that is alive and it's you. And it transforms events into experiences, which is why we're all part of this event of this conversation, but all three of us are having a completely unique experience, which is our dreaming middle realm. Does that kind of make sense?
I'm just still back on that line that you said. There is this space that is alive, that is you, and that transforms the event into an experience. It's like I'm just sitting with that for a sec.
Let's sit with it. Yeah.
There's so much in that line in my body, like responding to that. Kathleen, I don't know if you want to just share
Yeah,
why.
for me, it's just this. I hum. I mean, I go on mute because otherwise you'd just be hearing me hum the whole time. But it's this resonance and it's a reverberance when you speak to it. Like I feel it as vibration. So it's
Mm.
so it's even like going behind trying to analyze what you're saying. It's like feeling it reverberating through my
Mm.
chest, through my voice. Um, which is that
So
space.
you're humming while you listen, and then
Yeah.
you're attuning to the way that resonance shifts. The resonance of your own hum shifts in response to what you're hearing.
Oh yes, my hum is like goes deep and then yeah, it's and I the word I use is delicious. It's like that's what it feels like when I'm
Mm.
receiving these transmissions from you and from each of our speakers. It's like this, yeah, it's this exquisite honey.
Wow. Exquisite honey.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that this is a
So
magic
you're so you are
association.
so mm, so you're actually sitting with the resonance of your own voice as like a
Mm.
guide for soul,
Mm.
right? I mean, that's what I'm hearing. And that feels very familiar to me as like if I'm playing an instrument or singing or somehow inner shifts immediately manifest in the voice, immediately manifest in the sound of the music. And it's not causal. It's not that the inner shift causes it, it's that the two somehow are each other. Um, so yeah, I love that. That's that you're like mapping the movement of psyche or soul with the hum. I'm going to try that. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Keep it coming.
Mm.
And yeah, the thought I had as you were talking about the process that you do when you work with people, Ryan, is that how one, the thought was there's such a lack of analysis and judgment through using the music. And the music itself almost takes us out. I think Michael Mead was talking about emotions as something that moves us. And I got this sense of like the music is something that moves us. So we get back into what the energy that moves us.
Mm.
We're able to then see this object from that place of being moved. Does that make sense? That's,
Does to me.
yeah. And how
Yeah.
different it is to be able to see from that place that,
And it's so strange that you can see it in that short a time. When I first tried this a year and a half ago was the first time I tried this with people. And I was terrified because I didn't know if it would work. But it was unbelievable because it's like you're looking at the same thing. Nothing physically has changed, but that person's experience of it is completely different after just a few minutes of attuning to this middle realm, whether we call it soul or psyche or image or it doesn't matter what we call it, right? But it's autonomous. Like it's not an extension of conscious will. It has its own life. And there's something really healing in relating to that again. And that's Mary Magdalene in us to me.
mm, mm, yes.
Just something just opened up for me there is imagine if all of these leaders could do this exercise or anyone like the division because you see something and it's black and white or it's they and them or it's we and us or whatever it is. But imagine if we could, like, as humanity, be able to take be in this middle place and just see a different perspective after like 10 minutes, to see a different perspective would change the world.
I I feel like I really don't have the skill to openly talk about what's happening in our world right now without leaving soul. But I do feel like what I can say and still stay in this together is that I'm convinced that the division that we see all around us would be impossible if people felt a living connection to this infinitely deep middle realm. I do. I have come, like, that's where I'm putting my chips. That's because, yeah, it's like you can't get swept up in identity politics on either side of on any side. You can't identify with things that surface level if you have a living rootedness to your own interiority. It's not possible. You can't look at another person as a commodity or something expendable when you are in touch with your own living depths. You can't. It's like it just goes away.
Do you think, Ryan, it's because and there's so many thoughts coming in, Kathleen. I'm thinking about the fly and the relationship to the fly from our chat with Puma. You know how once you start to come into relationship with aliveness in any form, it's like the irritant of that. Like, you know, we had this conversation with this wonderful man, Puma, and Kathleen had flies and I had moths and they were flying in front of the camera and they were, you know, we were both kind of laughing about the presence of these creatures that are, you know, normally deemed annoying in some respect, for the
Mhm.
fly particularly. But what the other thought that I was having was Ryan, because you've introduced me to this concept of sort of singing with the drones and feeling actually singing and feeling the pitch in my own body. When I
Mm.
started to do that, something really interesting was that the quieter that I did it, almost the more I felt this. It was like I started to hear the bees. So I would be humming, and the hum that I felt like the sound of bees or the sound of wasps when they're in the room. And so that for me then opened this. Then I started to hear the bees in the palm tree plants outside my office where I'd be really drawn to I could hear it. It's almost like it brought me into like some different hearing with the sound of that. And then when I would make that sound in my body, it's like coming into relationship with those bees. And it's this, I think the point I guess I'm trying to come to is that when we come into this aliveness in ourself, we're almost then connected to aliveness all around us. And then that it's like that is somehow connected to that lack of division that you were talking about
Mhm.
politically as well. Does that make
I
sense?
think so. I think so. Everything you said resonates with me. And I can't even believe we're talking about bees because, um, I mean, that's just a beautiful, the bee itself is a really important part of the imagery of Mary Magdalene. Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that. And we've also had an
Oh, yeah.
amazing conversation about bees with another speaker of ours, Ema, didn't we? And
Oh,
so tell me please about the bees connection.
well, it's almost like I need to, it's just I've had some really, really, really important experiences for myself related to bees and Mary Magdalene. So, but I don't, but they're so new. I don't think that I think there would be a loss of vitality if I just like put it out there, you know?
Yeah, no, keep that one
But
safe.
yeah, but I'll just, maybe that's where to leave that one. But I'm sort of like, this is amazing. Of course, Vive ended up on bees. I don't even know how that happened, but that's what happens every time we hang out. So it's awesome. So,
I wonder because I'm so curious and it's been in my brain since we first started talking, which was tell me about this connection to moss and
mm,
music and middle places. Because I heard
okay.
you speak with Chris about moss
Yeah.
in Iron John in the episode that you guys did.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, now I'm fascinated when I go on walks. I just want to go and feel moss. So tell me about it.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, this was just a fun discovery. I bought there's a bookstore here that we love, and I bought a book about moss for my wife Holly, who's an amazing artist, and we we just like hang out on these are our conversations in the morning, having coffee together, and she started reading this moss book, um, and just it coincided so perfectly with me having Chris inviting me to talk about Iron John. And so maybe a door into the moss imagery is actually the tale of Iron John. Just very briefly, I'll give just there's this one, my favorite way to start fairy tales is once there was, and once there was not, a king whose kingdom was separate from the forest. And the forest used to be full of wild creatures, but the wild creatures disappeared, except for two birds of prey that could be spotted above the canopy of the trees from time to time. So the king started sending his huntsmen into this forest, and they just started disappearing. It's like a terrifying horror story. And anyways, the short version of the story is that eventually some guy comes along and says, I'm looking for a situation. It's an amazing line. And he gets and the king says, well, here's a situation, but I don't advise you going into it. Every time people go in the forest, they disappear. The guy says, well, I do not know fear. I have no fear, which of course is a lie. So I'm going into the forest. And then the next line in the fairy tale is like, so he takes his dog with him, because he doesn't know anything of fear. And he goes into the forest with his dog because he's terrified. And the dog runs up to this ancient pool that's black, still, reflective surface. And it runs up and it freezes right at the edge of the pool. And a huge red hand comes out of the pool and grabs the dog and pulls it into the bottom of the pool. So our man, who doesn't know anything of fear, runs back to the castle and gets four other people to come help him. Four other men, and they go in and they empty this ancient pool with buckets. And they find at the bottom of the pool a hairy red, like rust-colored man. And they take the man and they bind him with cords and they drag him back to the court and they put him in an iron cage in the sunlight, which I think is such a stunning image of this coupling of shame and newness that I was talking about in the Magdalene lore. And the king has a son, and this little boy has a golden ball that he loves more than anything. And at one point in the tale, the golden ball seems to find its way into the cage of the instinctual wild man. And the boy goes to ask for his ball back. The wild man says, let me out. Boy says, no way. They go back like this for days until finally the boy, short version, lets him out of the cage. But the boy had been told that he, like anyone who let the Iron Man out of the cage, would be punished by death. Right? So like if you live in a hierarchy, if you live in a patriarchy, the cost of relating to the instinctual is death. So the wild man gets out of the cage and he goes to leave, and the little boy cries out to him and says, please take me with you. So the wild man, who were supposedly as terrifying, tenderly takes this boy and places him on his shoulders and takes him into the forest. And the first thing that he does to start sort of teaching this boy how to reconnect with this wildness, how to rewild himself, is that he lays him down on a bed of moss where he sleeps. So the initiation, the middle, the boundary layer into a new way of life is going on. It's like unconsciousness on a bed of moss. So that's sort of the mythic background for the image of moss that Holly and I were coming into. And then she started to learn these just astonishing things about the way that moths behaves. And we could literally talk about it for hours. But in terms of the middle realm, what I did not know is that moss does not, it doesn't use roots to get its nourishment. It's like an upside down plant. So the shoots are themselves the things that absorb nutrition. And moss grows in an actual micro ecosystem that they call a boundary layer. that exists only as tall as the moss is. There's an actual microclimate that is a boundary layer between the rock and the air, or the tree and the air. And just the image of this ant plant that also was the first plant to evolve out of water. It's literally the middle plant between plants we think of as being, trees and plants on land versus plants in the ocean. So it is this beautiful image of this middle place. There's a boundary layer that we have to have if we're going to explore this dynamic equilibrium of this middle realm. And it's all upside down and backwards. It has evolved so that it can hold on to water as long as possible. But it also, like one of the things, this is a book by Robin Wall Kimmerer, before she wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. And like she talks about how the moss, I'm looking at my notes here so I don't get this wrong. They earn their freedom from the pain of change by total surrender to the ways of rain. Because the moss itself changes its own water content based on the environment, different than any other plants. And so there's something about this, like this, all the, right, of course, in dream realm and Jungian realm and mythology. And when we look at water, it usually has something, people will often play with that as an image of the unconscious, right? And the activities of dreaming psyche of this middle place we're talking about today. And the moss adapt based on that water in the environment. They actually change. Anyways, we could like geek out on that for like there's so many things, but that's a nice little introduction to moss as a middle place, as a boundary layer, as an in between. It is liminal life.
Kathleen, I can see you. I can see you there. Do you want to speak to that? Do you want to respond?
Oh, yes, just the moss. I feel it under my feet. Whenever I do a journey, I'm immediately taken to moss. That's just part of my middle realms is moss. It's part of my physiology.
Mm.
And also, I a few years ago did this big walk that we have here. It's like 9 hours to get in, and then you stay at a lighthouse, and then you walk out again. But I got blisters halfway there, so I ended up walking in bare feet. Then I had a big pack on, did my knee in. So the next day it took 11 hours, but I still remember walking in scrouchy mud and then like pockets of moss. And I don't remember the knee pain. I don't remember any of how freaking awful it was. What I remember is the feeling of that moss on my
Mm.
feet and just, it was a initiation, definitely walking, we couldn't get a ride out. We just had to walk. But that was what was stuck with me from this whole experience was how
Mm.
blissful it was to walk on the moss and how much gratitude I had for Papa Tuanuku, his Mama Earth, who we call our Mama Earth here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, how grateful I was to her for having these pockets of nourishment on this big pilgrimage that I was doing. So just as you were
Mm.
speaking to the moss, just again, just feeling that beneath my toes, just exquisite.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, so much in the moss. So much in the moss.
And I'm still kind of thinking about how responsive and adaptive it is that this middle place is responding to its, I think you called like a microclimate
Mhm.
and changing, its ability to change as
Mhm.
needed with what's happening around it
Mhm.
without it with it
Yeah.
still being moss
it's still moss. And she talks about how like any other higher plant would die if it did that, but not this middle place.
Yeah, and you know, I'm thinking about my experiences with moss, which was so funny because it was something I became really fascinated with when I moved down here and did bushwalks because it grows on everything. It like grows on tree trunks and also that with moss you can almost because it has and I'm realizing now listening to you, Ryan, it has doesn't have the well, maybe I'm wrong here, but doesn't seem to have the root system. You can actually pick moss up and then go and put it somewhere else. And it's like, because the girls would collect it and then make fairy gardens with moss in
Hmm.
different places around. So it has this incredible kind of flexibility to just be where it is. And something about that seems important in this middle place too.
Yeah. What's kind of, yeah, makes there's something about this middle place and its adaptability, its capacity to resuscitate life, like to um yeah, it
To be itself and to become at the same time.
hmm, but without a goal. It's not a striving. It's not a
Right.
right. It's there's something about that to me. There's the spontaneity of that.
I was just about to say the spontaneous responsiveness. And you know, when I started to do body dreaming training and to work in this realm of the nervous system, but for me it's always the system as a whole, you know, I quickly realized that it's not about regulation, it's about responsiveness. It's about how in this moment can I be responding to
Mm,
what is happening. And there's something of the middle, the relationship to the middle place and to the life within us, as you said early on, and that helps us to be in our own spontaneity and not in our own agenda, so that we can just be responding to life and at life within and life without. Would that be right, Ryan? In your
that that's very helpful to me, actually, the way that you kind of placed agenda and spontaneity facing each other that way. That helps sort of clarify it for me, actually. There's something, yeah, it's not an agenda. You can't, there's no, this isn't a place for this like James Hillman will talk about like this isn't really a place for Hercules. This isn't a place for solar heroics.
Mm.
Um, you know, this is different than that. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
represented by that dark forest.
the dark forest that used to be full of the wild, right? You get this sense that the king lost his connection to that wildness. And and then the whole tale unfolds, as you know, just, but it's a beautiful tale of mentoring,
Mm.
of the instinctual mentoring this young boy. Um, and then there's silver and lunar and feminine, like hidden and woven throughout, which is a whole another thing. But yeah, I think the reason that I brought in Moss and music and Mary Magdalene is those are three living images for me that I am constantly interacting with to try and relate to this middle place.
Mm.
They all deal in resonance and adaptation and movement and life and
Spontaneity. You know, I would say
spontaneity.
in music, it's that responsiveness and the spontaneity and the agenda, the, being agendaless almost. But also, there's always an outcome, but it's an agendaless outcome in that
Yeah.
responding and being with, like in music, especially, right?
And it's an agendaless, but not passive at all, right? It's like what it is when the image comes in, it's the willingness to risk trusting it in that moment and to allow it to be different 5 minutes later, too. But when you, so there's in the image of Mary Magdalene's trust in her imaging capacity, there is in that this tangible, tasteable, uh, there's an immediacy in the trusting of the image. So it's very active. And like as an improvising musician, if I resist trusting that, all the music suffers. It will negatively impact the ecosystem of everything if I am purely passive. If I only make space for others, it doesn't actually make space for others. For them to have space, I have to create my own. And then from that, I can we can build something living together. Um, but it requires that immediacy of trust. Uh, so there's something about this middle realm in that as well. Spontaneous, agendaless, but also saying, this really is where I am right now.
Yeah.
Which,
Engaged.
yeah, it can feel terrifying. It's like, to me, it's still absolutely terrifying to live from that place. There's a very real fear connected to risking that.
Mm.
So,
Ryan, thank you.
you're
Yeah,
so welcome.
thank you so much. Kathleen, I wondered if you wanted to just jump in before I move into just talking about um the next little the next little piece.
Yeah, just I well for moss it feels very giving how the moss provides the bed for the little boy. The moss is very giving, and so that's what I was receiving from the Middle Earth as well. It's just
Mm.
so giving. And then just I was thinking about alliteration of Mary Magdalene music and moss and how it sounds like like it does
Mm.
sound like So I just
That's
wanted to
right.
put it in. Yeah, the sacred hum is associated with Middle Earth, Mary Magdalene, and the music.
Um, so Leonard Bernstein, the great composer conductor, um, he gave a series of lectures at Harvard once where he imagines the connection between language and music. And he, in his imagination, is convinced that is the first sound on the way to language, and that it's the sound of the child getting ready to receive the mother, right? And and so then the first word would have been ma, and that's what like a playful way that he plays with sound and the birth of music and language in the human psyche, and I love that. So that comes to mind when you say that. Mm.
And isn't it a nourishing sound?
It's such a
Mm.
nourishing sound, yeah. If you're at a jazz club and it starts to swing, like really swing, so you can't hold still, people will make their jazz faces. There's a great poem about that, but you'll hear people go, like that's the sound. When the music's good, that's the sound. So yeah, that's the sound.
Oh, man, I love that so much, Ryan. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you for bringing all of this to us in the way that you do, which is just so unique and
Mm.
special. I'm so blessed, and grateful to have you as a mate and a friend and a colleague. And
I,
I have loved having being in this conversation.
Me too. Thank you to both of you so much. What a beautiful space. I mean, it's just alive right here. So That's just a good hang.
Oh,
Kathleen?
well, we know you have an incredible free gift for us, Ryan, to bring people into your realm where they can discover more. And I mean, I already want to come with Phoebe to Salt Lake City. I want to come with you to Mary Magdalene's temple, and then I want to come into a jazz club with you and make the jazz face together. I'm
Well,
manifesting that.
so that's interesting. Like, I really hope that at some point, actually, Holly and I have been talking. We genuinely hope to curate some kind of experience for people to come and experience the Mary Magdalene stuff. That's because it's unthinkable, really, that that's in Utah of all places, actually, uh, which is a whole nother story. So that would be so fun to do that together sometime. We would love that. And yeah, I mean, so my one of the things that has come alive for me, uh, in has shocked me that it's come alive for me, is astrology, which I never, ever in a million years would have thought that it would captivate me as it has. And for me, it's very much not a literal thing. Like, it's like, to me, it's not about prediction or planets causing anything. It's a language of cycles. It's a stunningly beautiful language of the cyclical. And I feel like at the heart of my own disconnect from the inner Mary Magdalene or the inner moss or the inner music was a lack of language. Like, I didn't even have the language for experiencing the cyclical. And so my gift is that I will be creating a tour of the astrological houses. So if you look at your birth chart, which is a circle, like if you look at it, it's a circle, which I love to imagine as like a womb tomb containing the energies of someone's life in image. There you'll see it divided into 12 sort of pie slices, and those are the houses. Those are the literally the places of life. And I love the word place because place is about soul. It's about middle realms. And so I'll be creating a guide, a guide through the houses so that people can go through their own birth charts and start to imagine an embodied connection to those places and to play with the imagery that they see there. So I know it's been really nourishing for me. And again, never in a million years would have thought that I would have fallen in love with this language the way that I have, but I have. so, so that's I think there's something about finding the language of cycle, a language that plays and dances in the realm of the cyclical instead of the linear. It's been really important for me. Yeah.
Yeah. All I can say to that is cool. Like it's so incredible. And having experienced one of Ryan's readings personally, I cannot recommend them more highly. So you can head
Mm.
to the link below for Ryan's free gift and to also check out your very own myth, which is Ryan's astrological readings, which are amazing. Need I say more? Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you both so much. That was so fun. Mm.